Hey bro, could I battle your Goth sister? Well, in Pokemon Legends ZA, as we continue through the ZA Battle Royale, one of the important characters we're gonna meet is Ivor. Actually, we meet him pretty early on as we find out he's the leader of this group and dojo called the Fist of Justice. And apparently one thing they want to do is get rid of the wild zone so that Pokemon can just roam free, not necessarily for a Pokemon rights reason, but because they just want to throw hands with Pokemon. Yeah, alright, that is quite an introduction. So anyway, making our way through the story and up in the ranks, Ivor is supposed to be the trainer we battle against for the next promotion match. But when we arrive at the dojo instead, first we had to battle Josie, who was a student that we had battled before, so there's a funny little rivalry going on with her. But after a decently quick battle, Ivor finally shows up, and he is looking for Gwen, his sister, and yeah, he's not messing around, yelling, running around everywhere. And apparently we can't even battle him because he doesn't own a smartphone. Instead, his sister Gwen is the one who takes care of everything, especially the matches utilizing the Rotom phone. Look man, I just want to win my battle and move my way up to rank A, instead I have to deal with this himbo. I was actually a little annoyed with him during the first interaction because he seemed like this guy who was just stupid, but now during this event getting to experience the pure himbo energy, I totally get it. By the way ladies, I'm just as meatheaded as this guy in real life. So that becomes a little challenge that we have to do before we can battle Ivor. Okay, that shouldn't be too difficult, I mean who else looks like this guy? Of course we stop by the Looker Bureau and talk with Emma, the #1 detective in Lumio City, and she's able to help out just asking questions and getting a little more information. Because, you know, there's not a whole lot we can go off of just knowing that like, oh, my sister's missing, like, you know, tell us a little bit about her. That leads us to City Hall, where we have to ask around a few of the NPCs. And man, I hate that there's just a bunch of bait dialogue coming from them and, you know, you just find out that they're talking about something completely different until the final guy can actually tell you something about Gwen. So the Wild Goose Chase leads us to the Novu Cafe, as we find out that Gwen sometimes comes here with Kanari. Oh boy, back to our favorite gym leader, but not really a gym leader. And even though Ivor just barges in, again, you know, just two completely different energies that clash here, Kanari is actually able to help us out. And one thing I really do like about Lumio City is that, well, obviously if you're staying here, then some characters that you've interacted with during previous events would obviously show up in future ones because, you know, they're still here. So yes, Kanari is here, and you know, even though she doesn't take up a whole lot of this, any more of her is really fun, especially because she doesn't want to give us any information until she's had a rematch with the player character. So that is kind of cool, a rematch not too long after the other one. And even though this one isn't a promotional match, it is still fun, but I think it is also kind of a neat way to show your progression, because before she was kind of like a boss, but now she's a bit of a stepping stone to the next boss. Anyway, as you would expect, I win the battle, and she tells us that Gwen has actually been looking for her own place that she can be by herself. And another interesting little hint is that apparently we'll find this by the fountain of a Pokemon that her partner Pokemon is weak to. And this is where we learn that her partner Pokemon is actually Chandelure. You know, very odd, definitely not the Pokemon I would have expected for somebody who's part of a dojo. But anyway, we find a Clawitzer fountain and freeze it over. This is like the only time that this field move is used here, or at least, you know, up until this point. So it's something that you really wouldn't have thought about, but by freezing the fountain, it actually stops some of the water flow and allows us to access a portion of the sewer. On one hand, it is actually really neat, but on the other hand, it feels like, you know, I wouldn't say that it's contrived, but more so that we're doing some very specific stuff. I wonder if you could have done this before, or if you just really needed to unlock this bit of story in order to actually freeze it. Because after you finish this event, it seems like you're unable to do it again. Anyway, the point is we actually get to go underground into the sewers. And I really do like this biome. It's a fun idea to utilize the city setting, and we actually do see other portions of a sewer come into play later. But for now we can find a few ghost Pokemon and just other sewer related Pokemon. And overall, I think the aesthetic was done pretty well. Rather than just being like the cave on the beaten path, the more industrial feeling really makes it feel like you shouldn't be here. An element that we've seen in other Pokemon games, you know, even sewers that we've seen like in Black and White, but I feel like here, just with how big it is and how the lighting is done, it is a little more effective. The next obstacle is a gate with a lock on it, so then even though Ivor proposes to punch right through it, apparently the solution is to look for a key, at which point a Klefki happens to pass by. So then we're supposed to catch the Klefki and maybe it'll have the key to unlock everything, but unfortunately that isn't the case. Yeah, I guess it was kind of cool and a fun way to introduce Klefki, but I do wish it would have actually worked because otherwise the solution we end up going with is just having Ivor punch right through it anyway. And yeah, oh boy, I had no doubt he could have done it, but it did play into the interaction between himself and Emma that had been going on, where she doesn't want him or anybody else to damage any property, but for it to just end up being what we do anyway, almost sort of made it feel a bit redundant here and there, but I will admit it was really funny. I guess what I'm saying is there should have been a bit more exploration allowed, you know, maybe let me try to find the key myself or discover Klefki on my own, or just encourage Ivor from the very beginning to punch the lock. Either way, we continue on and find another dead end, where we have to explore this room and find maybe an entrance to somewhere or some kind of clue. Yeah, I'll take it, finally allowing me to explore a bit more. But this time Emma is a little more accepting of allowing Ivor to punch through the wall, which he attempts to do, but it turns out the whole thing was an illusion anyway. Man, I really wish that I would have tried to figure that out. I think in effect it'll probably be locked if you try to access it before the story demands it, because then there are some character moments we would miss out on, but I will say it was a pretty funny visual. And actually just walking through an illusory wall is really cool. Too bad it dissolves as soon as you pass through it, because I would have liked it to stay up the whole time. And then if you come back to this area and explore more, then it's just on you to remember that the wall is not even real. Finally, we make it to the very end of this dungeon, and we find Gwyn. Wait a minute, that's not a JoJo girl. Okay, well maybe that's on me for assuming that Ivor's sister will look just exactly like him. That's just how Pokemon is. But she is a lot shorter and even dressed like Chandelure. And wait a minute, I've actually seen her before. Yes, that's right, you were the other contestant at Kanari's Quiz Wiz. You didn't even make it to the final round, you're not a true Knatic. Well, okay, neither am I. I was getting coached, but anyway, I think it was really cool that we were introduced to this character before she actually had any plot relevance. Again, really just tying into Lumio City being a lot more connected, and it makes a lot more sense as the protagonist continues to make their mark that a lot more people are going to know about them, and we'll end up getting to know people even better. So anyway, this gives us a battle against another type specialist, and in a way very similar to the previous one that we did. Kind of is a gym leader, but kind of not. Again, there's a whole challenge, a storyline, you have to defeat them in order to move on, and they use only one type with their own signature Pokemon, which at the moment goes pretty well because I'm no stranger to busting ghosts, but it was also really interesting because it was very telegraphed that there would be some sort of Mega Chandelure, but actually seeing it in execution, yes, I do really like it. Chandelure, definitely one of my favorite Generation 5 Pokemon, and you know, making it just an even bigger chandelier, yeah, I think that totally works out. It kind of anthropomorphizes it a little more, but also does give it a significant change while keeping the same idea. So we've done it, we defeated Gwyn. So then she kind of spills her guts, just letting Ivor know that she doesn't like how much he's battling, because they are kind of a package deal, because she manages all the Rotom phone stuff and has to be present for every match he has, and because he is one of those one-track mind kind of guys who just really wants to train and battle. They really are at odds, but not in an intense way, again, a lot more like a sibling kind of way, and I think it was a great idea also to have him contrasting so different visually as well, not just in terms of personality. It ends up being a really funny comparison, especially because we know she is still part of a dojo. So yeah, it was great. I think Gwyn is a really fun character, but that still does leave us with a promotion match against Ivor himself. And yeah man, I forgot how huge this guy is. By the way, it is also a neat little idea that the Rotom phone has a blue case, because we know it isn't actually his phone, it belongs to Gwyn. And also the fun idea of having other NPCs visibly in the back watching a battle. She's there the entire time, but anyway, yeah, Ivor's got a bunch of fighting type Pokemon. And yes, another fun time. Obviously, I think the story and the characters are very interesting, but then the actual battles and traversing here and there are what make up the actual, you know, gameplay portions. And his Pokemon were a bit of a decent challenge. Man, I had to run around everywhere here and there. I had some super effective moves, but with his Pokemon just being as big and bulky as they are, yeah, it wasn't all that easy. I mean, yeah, it wasn't like extremely difficult, but a fun challenge. And then finally we get his ace Pokemon, Phalanx, given away by the backpack that he wears the whole time. But yeah, telegraph once again, there was going to be a Mega Phalanx. But yeah, I think it is a really funny idea how they all just stack up on top of each other with a shield and a spear, and the one in the middle, the leader, is even bigger, but terrifying to face in battle because of that no retreat. But defeating it, that brings us to the end of the battle and the end of this event for now, and I think it was a really fun one. A little bit annoying in the beginning because of how much we have to run around, because it wasn't necessarily much to do, not much to figure out, basically like a story on rails, but for what it is, it was really fun. What I did really like about it was that it introduced a brand new area that wasn't all that big, but it was still something new and interesting and a cool fun idea that could be further explored later on. Of course, Ivor is really funny and so is Gwyn, but if anything, I think they are best together, when they're interacting with each other, when they're talking or thinking about each other, though I can see that their relationship needs even more work after this. So let me know what you think in the comments below about this spooky portion of the story. Venturing through the abandoned sewers with a bunch of creepy ghost Pokemon, partnered alongside a meathead and a detective to find a lonely goth girl. But anyway, I should get going because, you know, having your own hideaway away from everybody else sounds like a good idea. Gwyn, you just might be onto something, though maybe not in the sewers. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, including the Great Gators. Toucan Nia, That's Ven, Alex with Shiny Hunts, TBC Plumbing, Queued Up, Dabuda, Cosmo Zero, Tyler Hopper, Koi 13, Cemetery Hill, Cheez-It 62, Gator Kid 509, TF, Mathaclog 947, Taichirai, Phantom, and Quago. If you'd like to support, see your name here, get access to emotes for comments, live streams, sometimes early videos, a members Discord, and our monthly podcast, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky as well for more memes. Anyway, this is GatorX, and I will catch you all later.
Mega Lucario, Blaziken, Dragonite, Machamp. This will be flying with Pokemon Trading Card Game XY Furious Fist. Each booster pack of 10 cards sold separately. Cards vary by pack.